All right, so thank you everyone for joining us today for the Virtual NSLI-Y office hours and Q&A session. So my name is Angela and I'm joined today by my colleague Shamarcus. And our intention today is basically to cover some frequently asked questions first, because we might answer your questions then, and then we'll jump into any other questions you have. Once we get through our little presentation at the beginning, feel free to treat this like a drop-in session. You aren't required to stay the whole time. If you get all your questions answered, our intention is just to make sure that you have all the info that you need to determine your eligibility and to hopefully apply for Virtual NSLI-Y. Also note that there is a Q&A box. So you can feel free at any time. We recommend maybe holding your questions until we get through our main presentation, because again, we might answer your question, but feel free to put any questions that you have into the Q&A box during the presentation as well. And we might get to your presentation to your question by responding to you directly in the Q&A box, or we will hold your question until the end. And especially if we get the same question from multiple people, for example, we will share that out at the end so that everyone can hear our answer at once. And with that, we can move on to the next slide. I think actually this is a welcome slide, saying hello and a few of our participants from last year. So again, before we jump into frequently asked questions, we want to provide a quick overview of the program. So NSLI-Y is a U.S. Department of State program, and Shamarcus and I work for American Councils for International Education, which is a nonprofit that helps to administer the program. And we do that in close collaboration with the Department of State, who funds the program and determines its main eligibility for the program. It is structured into a 10-week beginner level foreign language exchange program. And it's also a cultural experience. And unlike the overseas scholarship options for NSLI-Y, this is 100% online. And I want to emphasize that all virtual NSLI-Y classes are designed for students who have no prior experience with the language. Unlike overseas NSLI-Y, this program is for true beginners, true novices in the language. So if a student has never even studied a foreign language before, or you're feeling a little intimidated by the scripts that you're seeing on the screen right now, that is fine. You are very welcome to apply. The idea behind this program is that you're starting from the beginning, you're working together through the program with a group of students you're all encouraging one another, and all you really need is a strong commitment to language learning and an interest in other cultures in order to succeed in this program. Currently, we offer Arabic, Mandarin Chinese, Hindi, Korean, Russian, and Turkish language learning. The number of sections and the available times for each of these languages can depend on the teacher's availability, budget considerations, how many sections that we have. But all languages in winter 2024 will have between 1 and 4 sections per term. All right, next slide. We're just going to go over a little bit more of what the program is like, what the structure is. So in addition to the language learning opportunities that this program provides, at least 4 guest speakers will join every class to provide participants with more cultural context for your language. So guest speakers could include alumni of the overseas NSLI-Y programs. It can be professionals who use their language and cultural skills at their job, or it could be experts on cultural arts and cuisine. So here you just see some examples, some images of students who were practicing their calligraphy, as well as students who are participating in a live demonstration of, I think it's making Turkish coffee. So essentially this can change from term to term, but the most popular ones tend to be, some sort of interactive food experience that's very common. We send students the basic materials that they need to engage in those opportunities. Every student gets a little box of supplies at the beginning of the term. or learning about songs and dances, learning about the arts. All of our class sections have slightly different guest speakers and opportunities. There are also optional student group meetings led by Shamarcus, who we'll hear more from in a moment, which happen outside of the language classes in order to help students have some fun, get to know each other across different class sections. And also you might hear from NSLI-Y alumni or other speakers at these group meetings. We also offer a few other ways for students to interact. We use the Canvas platform for students to engage in their classes, but then we also have discussion boards and other opportunities for students to interact on Canvas. And then we'll mention this again later, but we are rolling out a Discord server for our current participants. So that's another way that students are able to interact with each other across class sections and across language interests in the program. All right, next slide. So we're not going to spend too much time on this slide since all of this information is available on our website, but this is just a quick overview of the eligibility requirements for this program. Please do check out our website for some additional information about eligibility. This is just sort of the short version of it. And also class schedule options and participation requirements are on our website. Also note that the date range for birthdays, we know that some high school students, their birthdays may be outside of this range, but this is sort of an immovable date range for eligible birth dates. So we can't grant exceptions to that, but for our next application cycle, the eligibility age will shift by a full year. So do keep that in mind. If you or your student is not eligible this time, they may be eligible next time. Also, we can't make exceptions to the U.S. citizen requirement. The student needs to be a U.S. citizen at the time of application. So again, if a student is a permanent resident and getting close to becoming a citizen, we encourage them to apply for the next application cycle when the student is actually has met that criterion at the point of application. And similarly, on the next slide, the same kind of goes for our application information. I'm not going to get too far into this. We also have a YouTube webinar that has plenty of info about what you can expect in the actual application itself. But one thing we want to make a special note about here is that unlike overseas NSLI-Y, there is not a GPA requirement for virtual NSLI-Y. While we do ask for a school transcript as part of your application, your motivation for learning about foreign languages and cultures is more important than your school grades. So while Virtual NSLI-Y provides students with grades as a tool to help you benchmark your progress as the program goes on, this is not a credit-bearing course. So students are given grades as a way to help them to understand where they're at, how they could improve, but it is not, students are not provided with a transcript after the course is over. And this class is not necessarily transferable to another program. Also, speaking of grades, the goal of this program is not necessarily to get a 100%. We have a lot of very, very motivated students who participate in this program and are looking for, straight A's and want to get everything perfect. But learning a foreign language, especially the ones that are provided through this program, is really difficult. And we don't want students to feel like they are, like they have to get an A. The idea is A for effort and doing their best, being on time and trying their hardest. And that's really what we're looking for in this program. It's not an expectation that a student is getting every grade, submitting everything perfectly. Trying and failing is part of the benefit of this program. It's a safe space to do that. And also just to make you comfortable with your language. That is really the main goal, is by the end of the program, a student should feel like they're motivated and excited to keep going with the language. That is the purpose. For any questions about the actual application or technical issues that you might encounter, please be sure to contact Virtual NSLI-Y Administration, which is generally me and Shamarcus, before the application due date. Because of course, on the day of the application deadline, we tend to get a very high volume of last minute emails or questions or worried, did you get my application, that sort of thing, phone calls. So if you do have any questions, generally speaking, we encourage you to apply early. Look at that application now, take your time and submit it when you're ready. Don't wait until the last minute to submit, and then you're going to feel a lot better about it. And then if you do have questions, we're going to have time to answer them. All right. So next we have the timeline for this upcoming term. So as you may have guessed from how I'm talking about it, the application is now open. This is the timeline for students to begin studying in January. So classes begin the week of January 7th and go through March 17th as, again, a 10-week program. And the deadline for the winter 2024 application is October 23rd at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Please make sure to adjust that to your local time zone. And we do tend to list things in Eastern just because it's easier for us to have a standard. We have students all across the US. We even have a student from Hawaii this term, which is very exciting. We really do our best to accommodate students' time differences, but generally speaking, we list things in Eastern and then we ask you to convert. So no, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And then the teacher recommendation deadline is a few days later on October 26th at midnight, essentially. Students find out whether they were admitted to the program or whether they were designated to be an alternate in late November or potentially early December. We also, if a student is made an alternate, there is a period of time during which they're essentially on a wait list. And if a student who was initially a finalist is unable to participate, then that alternate will be notified and can be added to the program. Students will also, of course, be notified if they are not selected and are often encouraged to reapply in the future, as it is a competitive program. And there are plenty of fantastic students who, unfortunately, we don't have enough scholarships for. And then orientation is, we do it in mid-December, which may seem a little bit early, but of course the holidays can be pretty crazy. And we want our participants to feel prepared for the program to start in early January. So student orientation is technically optional, but strongly encouraged for students to attend that live online, of course, though a recording will be made available. And then again, classes begin in January, and then we have a closing ceremony in late March. Typically, we have Department of State staff who attend this. There is it's essentially like a mini commencement or graduation ceremony. And so again, we strongly encourage students to be available for that as well. So that is a preview of the timeline for the upcoming term. And I will note that if anyone is thinking about next fall, we begin that cycle around probably late April or early May. We will open the application for fall 2024. So just to plan ahead, keep that in mind as well. See, and then I think we are finally getting to Shamarcus's part. So yes, I will pass things over to Shamarcus, who will share some answers to some of the most common questions that we tend to get from students. And then after that, we will open it up for your remaining questions.
Yeah, thank you, Angela. I've been going through some of the questions, trying to answer as many as possible. But for now, let's go through some FAQs. I'll probably answer some of the questions you already have asked in the Q&A chat box here. So for our first question, is this program just online because of COVID-19? No. Virtual NSLI-Y is a NSLI-Y program option for novice language learners, which started in 2019 and was designed to be online only. This is different from the NSLI-Y program designed to take place abroad. And many of you have asked some questions about the NSLI-Y program. These are two separate programs, and the applications for both are open, and they are separate. Second question, does every student who applies to Virtual NSLI-Y automatically get accepted? We wish, right? But no, student applications are evaluated in a merit-based selection process. Next question, what's the GPA requirement for this program? We do not have a GPA requirement, which is great, right? But in contrast, the NSLI-Y, the overseas NSLI program does have a GPA requirement. You can learn more about that on our website. Can I apply to the program if I'm a U.S. citizen attending high school in Puerto Rico, Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands, or Northern Mariana Islands? Yes, absolutely. Just be sure you are aware of the class times and make sure that they work for you. And in fact, I think we do have a student now who's on program who's from the Virgin Islands. We're super excited to have him. Next question, can I continue to do Virtual NSLI-Y for a second term? No, part of our eligibility requirement is that you have not participated in the Department of State program. And since you already participated in the Virtual NSLI-Y program and you're no longer a beginner level, you would not be eligible to reapply to the. I'm finishing my senior year now. Am I eligible for NSLI-Y after I graduate high school? No, but you can check out CLS Spark, which is another program that also is targeted towards language lovers like you all. Do I have to pay to apply or to participate in Virtual NSLI-Y? And I saw some of you ask this question in the chat. No, this is a scholarship program of the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs. That means that we cover all the necessary components for your program, including class materials. And if you need any financial assistance, we can also support you with like internet, helping you with your internet or with a device to be able to connect to your classes. Next question, can I apply to Virtual NSLI-Y if I have ever or never studied a language before? Yes. Virtual NSLI-Y is for complete beginners. That means you have not studied it formally, right? Duolingo is fine if you, say for instance, are interested in Arabic and you've been on Duolingo just trying to, get a grasp of the language a little bit. You will still be eligible to participate in Virtual NSLI-Y, but if you've taken a formal class, say for instance at your high school, or you've done some summer camp or something like that, that will be considered formal study in the language, and you would no longer be considered a beginner at the language and not eligible for Virtual NSLI-Y. So I've studied my preferred language before, but I'm still a beginner. Am I eligible for Virtual NSLI-Y? Like I said, no, Virtual NSLI-Y classes are intended for true beginners with no prior experience studying the language. My current school year isn't complete. What should I submit as my transcript? You can submit your most recent transcript. This can be a unofficial or official transcript. This can be a screenshot of your report showing your name and all your details in terms of your classes and your grades. And as a reminder, we do not have a GPA requirement, so don't be afraid if you have a C in your calculus class. But yeah, just for your transcripts, they can be official or unofficial. So I'm excited about the Virtual NSLI-Y language I'm applying for, but I barely know anything about it. Is this for me? Absolutely. Virtual NSLI-Y is designed for total novices. You will need to be committed to language and cultural learning to have a successful experience. You will be in a small group of other students who are complete beginners as well. So please do not be afraid that you don't know that much in the language. You are in good company. Can I still apply for NSLI-Y overseas summer or academic year if I participate in Virtual NSLI-Y? Absolutely. There is a separate application for this process, like I mentioned earlier, but your participation in Virtual NSLI-Y will be considered if you apply for an overseas program. And that kind of means like, so say for instance, you participated in Virtual NSLI-Y, you did a great job and everything. We do take note of that. And so once we have you in our record and you're applying to the NSLI-Y and they saw you did a great job there, it looks good for your application. What if I need to miss a class? Now, this is a big one because I am the one who keeps track of your attendance. Virtual NSLI-Y students are allowed up to 3 excused absences, not 4, not 5, not 6, but 3. You should let us know ahead of time if you are going to miss a class. Of course, if there's an emergency or anything like that, then you're not able to, right? But just let us know as if you are able to in advance so that we will know. Anything beyond 3 could be considered for dismissal from the program if you miss more than 3 classes. And then I'll also note that excessive tardiness will also accumulate to absences. It could lead to dismissal from the program as well. Who is the best person to complete my recommendation? Someone who knows you, right? So someone who knows you very well and can speak to you, your motivation and readiness to be a virtual language student. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a teacher, right? Maybe you are doing great in your class and you stay out the class and you always have conversations with your teacher. So your teacher is able to speak well about you and your motivation to participate in the program, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, right? So say, for instance, you play soccer or football and your coach knows you pretty well. Your coach can write your recommendation, right? The only thing is that your parents cannot, or family members cannot write a recommendation for you, right? Of course, mom is going to say all the great things about you, right? Grandma is going to say even better, but they are not able to write a recommendation on your behalf. All right, what are the differences between Virtual NSLI-Y and NSLI-Y overseas programs? Well, Virtual NSLI-Y is for beginners only. It's entirely virtual. It takes place during the school year, and it offers 6 language options, right? However, for NSLI-Y, I'll note that NSLI-Y welcomes all language levels, right? So say, for instance, you've already studied Arabic and you want to continue your studies, right? NSLI-Y would be a great program for you. NSLI-Y is also, the overseas NSLI-Y, as it says in its name, is overseas. It takes you abroad, and it's in person, right? I think they have 7, I should know this, but I'm blanking. Right, but you can find more information about that on our website in terms of the NSLI-Y program. But for Virtual NSLI-Y, it's beginner level, virtual, 6 languages, and it takes place during the school year. Why should I study a critical language? Well, many reasons, many reasons, right? For me, I'm also like one of you all. I love studying languages. I wish I can study more. There's so many benefits to it. It can support academic achievement, provide cognitive benefits, and affect positive changes in attitude towards other cultures. It can also lead to exciting career and study abroad opportunities, right? So studying abroad, I know for a fact, looks great on your resume. So please do it as much as possible. And you all are super young. So please take advantage of the opportunity now to be able to travel, learn languages, and meet new people. All right, so now we will open the floor up to Q&A. Angela and I will tag team questions you may have. Please ask any questions you have in the Q&A chat box, and we'll answer them live.
And I think I've got 3 teed up, and then we can start alternating. But I started responding to some people via typing, but then I'm getting a number of sort of similar questions. So some students have asked, I've either been born in another country or I have the heritage of the language that I'm interested in applying for. Am I still eligible? Does this affect my chances of getting in? That kind of question. So what we say is, so you are absolutely welcome to apply for this program, but think about how participation in NSLI-Y is going to be linked to your future academic and professional goals. So when we're looking at applications, we want to know, more, how are you going to continue to use this language out in the world, and maybe not just for personal reasons. And also selection preference I'm reading from our website, that's why I sound a little stilted here. Selection preference may be given to those who do not have access to critical language resources in their home community. So if you already have access to learn the language of your heritage, then there may be another student who doesn't have access to that, and they may get selection preference. But that doesn't mean that you are not eligible or that you won't get it. So that's kind of our general answer to all of those sorts of questions. Another one that jumped out was how proficient are students in the language they are studying after their session? So of course, so Shamarcus was talking about the attendance policy. This is why our attendance policy is so strict. 10 weeks is not very long. 90 minutes twice a week is not very much time, given that the rest of your life you're spending, not necessarily immersed in that language. And so that's why, the element of the program that we do have is very intensive. And the goal is to get you to, this isn't going to sound exciting, but it is, novice low, according to the ACTFL proficiency standards, ACTFL. And essentially what novice low means is that, you're not going to be fluent by any means, of course, but you should have some reading ability. You should be able to talk about yourself. And essentially by the end of the program, every student has, there's not an exam, but there is some kind of a project with an oral component where you are speaking in the language in front of other students, ideally without any English. Having seen, some classes, some students are still relying on their English a little bit, but then others are able to speak again in a very basic way in their chosen language. So it really, a lot of it is up to you and how much time you're putting into studying outside of Virtual NSLI-Y and how much advantage you're taking of any supplemental materials, etc. But the official goal is novice low according to ACTFL proficiency standards. And you can find a link to exactly what that means on our website. I believe it's under let's see, I'll tell you which, it is under the Virtual NSLI-Y eligibility and participation requirements. It might be, and essentially it's under eligibility requirements because as we want to make clear this is a beginner program. And I think the third question that, another question that someone had was, if someone's intermediate, is this the right program for me? And I think Shamarcus answered that pretty well a few moments ago, but basically that student is likely eligible for overseas NSLI-Y, but not for Virtual NSLI-Y. Virtual NSLI-Y is for beginners. So if a student is intermediate in one language, but they want to be a beginner speaker in another language, that's a different matter. But we do not offer intermediate level classes in Virtual NSLI-Y. Only overseas NSLI-Y has those different levels from total novice through to advanced. And then one more, and then I'll pass over to Marcus. Can you roughly say the acceptance rate? So we had been a little bit more cagey about this in the past, but and that's because we're a relatively new program and our acceptance rates have been somewhat inconsistent from term to term. While for overseas NSLI-Y, it's been around for 20 years and there's a good sense of how many students we get. So it really can vary, but typically the acceptance rate is between 30 to 40% of our students. So apply now because it's catching on, it's getting more popular, and we're seeing our acceptance rates get a little bit lower over time. But that is generally speaking the likelihood that, or not the likelihood, that is the general acceptance rate. Okay, and then I'll hand it over to Shamarcus for a moment.
Yeah, so I'll take 4. One student asks, I've done Duolingo in Arabic for quite a while and I finished the letters and numbers. Would I still be considered a complete beginner and eligible? As I mentioned, if you have done some study on Duolingo, that wouldn't be considered as formal study. So in that sense, you are still eligible. In terms of if you are on the beginner level, what you would have to do to assess your language level is go to the ACTFL website and answer these questions. You have to be able to say no to all of these to be able to say that you are a beginner level, right? So if you come out of it and you seem to be able to do a lot of these, that means you're not at a beginner level, and then you would not be eligible for the program, right? So that can be found on our website. You can go on the Virtual NSLI-Y. Our direct link is this here, NSLI for Youth, or nsli4youth.org/virtual. There you can find a lot of the information about the program, or all of the information really. And then I know for one other question someone asks is, where can you find the application? You can find the application here on our website, right? Yes. So yeah, so you have to be able to go through that questionnaire to assess your language level. Other question. How is that? Must do some student recommendation. How many should it be? Oh, yes, for recommendation, yes, you have to submit a recommendation for your application, right? If you don't have a recommendation attached to your application by the time that you submit, you are still eligible for the program. We will still read your application, though you'll be less competitive in comparison to other applicants who have a recommendation, right? So it's a complete package where we assess your motivation and readiness for the program. Other questions?
I can take one.
Sure.
So someone asked, can you apply for 2 languages, though only one will be chosen? Actually, well, sort of. So in our application, you are asked what your first preference language and your second preference language is. So you can't apply kind of equally. And we also ask you in the application to kind of focus on your first preference language. But it has happened that students are admitted to study their second preference language. So students are not required to choose a second preference language, but we encourage you to, because it makes it possible for us to potentially admit you to the program, even if there aren't any spots available in your first preference language.
Yeah.
And there was, do you want to go ahead?
No, you can go ahead.
There was a question, oh, now I've lost it too. So a question about, and yeah, we get a lot of questions kind of like this. Someone asked, will being accepted for virtual NSLI-Y disqualify you from being accepted to in-person NSLI-Y? Oh yeah, I think Shamarcus just grabbed that one, but basically, no, it will not. Unless you, don't go to any of your classes and are dismissed from the program, in which case it would be very unlikely that you would be selected for overseas NSLI-Y. Because as Shamarcus noted earlier, there is a note if a virtual NSLI-Y participant is applying for overseas NSLI-Y. And it'll just be a note on generally, how did the student do? There's not some sort of GPA requirement or anything like that, but did the student attend classes? Were they motivated? Did they do their best? Did they seem like excited about the program? That will be one of many elements considered on an overseas NSLI-Y application. But it certainly, so you can't do virtual NSLI-Y if you've already done the overseas program. It has to be virtual NSLI-Y first. So keep that in mind. If you are considering both programs, your virtual NSLI-Y experience has to take place before you go abroad with overseas NSLI-Y. But that's the only sort of eligibility potential issue there.
Good question. Okay, West Coast. Someone asks, we are in West Coast time zones. Will the virtual time fit our schedules during the week? Absolutely. In your application, there will be a section for you to select your preferences for scheduling, or your time preferences, right, for when you want to have your classes. So you'll be able to rank 3 of them, at least from my memory. So say for instance, you are in the West Coast, you can only take classes on Thursdays and Tuesdays, right? Then you would select that as your highest priority or your highest preference, where you want to have that, and then you can rank the other 2 class times that fits your schedule, right? Those class times can be found on our website. Let me find that really fast. These are your scheduling options, right? So you have Monday and Wednesday, 6:30 to 8 p.m. Eastern time, Tuesday and Thursdays, et cetera, right? So once you go into your application, you will see these again, and you will just rank these your top 3 to say like, okay, I'm available at these times, and this is when I want to have my classes, right? So those will accommodate your West Coast or our West Coast applicants, right? We do take all of that into consideration for our classes.
Yeah, and we did shift. We do recognize that, of course, these times are a little closer to the end of school for our West Coast and beyond students. But we did shift the 4th option there to make it a little bit later in winter than it was offered in fall. Because, again, we understand that many of you are busy, you have extracurriculars, and it can be really hard to fit this into your schedule. So do keep in mind that depending on the language and the availability of sections, we can't always give you your first choice of time, but we really try our hardest to do that because, of course, we want you to be able to participate. Yeah, these are the times. So for I'm actually on the West Coast, so just subtract 3, and you've got the time that these are offered.
Person asks, there's a question that says, if you're born abroad, click here. Does being born abroad mean any other country besides the US? Yes, if you were born abroad, that means you are, well, you could be a US citizen, but nonetheless, if you're born abroad, it means outside of the US, right?
Yeah, we've had students who were born abroad and have gotten into the program. So that by itself does not influence eligibility. I would refer you back to the response I gave earlier about, can you explain how you're using well, you need to be US citizen at the time of application, and you need to be able to explain how you're going to use the program sort of like out in society and not just, within your own family for personal reasons.
Yeah. Another question asks, can you apply for the virtual and overseas program at the same time if the overseas one will happen after, assuming you get it, of course? Yes, you can apply to both programs at the same time. They'll note that if you do participate in the NSLI-Y overseas program, so that's either summer or academic year, and then you still have interest in virtual NSLI-Y, you will not be eligible for virtual NSLI-Y after participating in the overseas program, right? But if you do virtual NSLI-Y first, then apply to NSLI-Y overseas, you will be eligible to participate in both programs, right? So you have to do virtual NSLI-Y, then NSLI-Y, but you can't do NSLI-Y, then virtual NSLI-Y.
And there have been some questions about what are the more or less popular languages. So I'm not going to directly answer that because it really, really varies from term to term. Like, you would be surprised. So we don't share that data because it wouldn't be helpful.
Let's see what else. A lot of these have been answered.
And yeah, I'm seeing some more like kind of specific questions related to the application. So for those, I would recommend, again, going to our website or looking at the YouTube like overview of the application, and that is likely to answer your questions.
Yeah, another good question. Someone asks, what is the most important aspect of the application? I would say your essays are the most important aspect of your application, right? So we do want to see compelling essays, that you put some thought into your essays and you've really thought about how studying your target language will impact your future or your trajectory in your language learning journey, right? So say for instance, you're interested in Korean. Why did you want to study Korean, right? How will virtual NSLI-Y help you in that journey with studying Korean, right? And then this is a tidbit for you all since you came here, right? A lot of students like to say that they want to study Korean because they love K-pop, right? Of course, we all love K-pop, right? But we want to know more, right? What else drives you to learn the language, right? So beyond K-pop, right? Beyond that cultural aspect of like enjoying that part of the culture, right? what else can you tell us about your interest in Virtual NSLI-Y? And we have so many people who say they love K-pop and they leave it at that, right? So if you want to have a competitive application, go beyond that.
And don't use ChatGPT.
Exactly. We
We can
know.
tell.
Angela, yes. You know.
Yes. Don't do that to us. Yeah, a number of these are related to the age limit, the requirements. Again, I'd refer you to the website for those. How many hours a week commitment is required to be successful in the program? That's a great question. So it somewhat varies, right? It depends on you, but there are there are 2 90-minute sessions a week. There are also those optional activities beyond class for the student group meetings. And then I believe, we expect, there we go, up to 3 hours of assignments or homework per week outside of language classes. In addition to a little bit of additional, preparation before classes begin. So, some students might put a lot more time into that, but we try to balance the fact that we're aware that these programs take place when you are already in school and you have a lot going on. So you are not being expected to be, studying 20 hours a week, like this is some kind of a university level course or something. But in order for this language to stick, you should be expecting, I'd say, around, and again, it could be more, but expect at least 3 hours per week outside of language classes. I think you'll find that relatively easy to hit, even though it seems like a lot, because our students get very excited about their language learning and looking for new opportunities to practice it. So it might sound like a lot, but it's also a lot of fun. So I think that time goes quickly.
Yeah. Someone else asks, my daughter just applied for a Chinese class after school program. She started her course online. Can she still participate? For her, if she's interested in applying for the Chinese program with Virtual NSLI-Y, she will not be eligible because she's taking this formal class, but she could apply for a different language that she is interested in that we offer. So say, for instance, she is curious about Turkish and she would like to study Turkish and she hasn't had any formal study in Turkish, then she is eligible to apply for that, right? But in terms of the Chinese class, and she's taking a formal class, and it will be most likely around the same time, she would not be eligible. If you're bilingual, it depends on, another person asks, if you're bilingual, will you be able to participate in the program? Yes, we don't have any qualms in terms of you being bilingual. It depends on which language you're bilingual in, right? So say, for instance, you're interested in participating in the Hindi program, you're bilingual in Hindi, that means you're not a beginner level and therefore you're not eligible for the program. But if you're bilingual in, say, for instance, Swahili English or something of that sort, right? That's not one of the targeted languages that you're applying for. You're fine. You can still apply. If you know Spanish, that's fine. You can still apply. But if you are applying for a target language and you want to study that language and you already know something in it, if you're already beyond a beginner level, then you're not eligible.
And on a similar topic, there was a question about, is overseas experience a disadvantage factor? So I'm gonna, Shamarcus, could you, let's see, what page are we on right now? Could you go to eligibility and participation requirements again? So at the top here, you'll see that the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs does have a set of sort of priorities with Virtual NSLI-Y. This is different from the overseas programs. This is specifically for the Virtual NSLI-Y program. You'll see these bullet points. It says preference will be given to candidates who have no prior exchange experience, have no or limited overseas travel residency, have no or limited familiarity with the cultures associated with the relevant target language, have not received formal instruction or tutoring in any of the other languages, and have not received formal instruction or tutoring in any language. Now, many of the people in this webinar probably meet one of those criteria, right? That doesn't, so if you've been abroad, there are many of our students have been abroad, but let's say there are 2 students with the exact same like qualifications, and there's no other deciding factors, and one, except that one has traveled the world or lived abroad for many years and the other one has not. In that case, that student who has not had those opportunities may be prioritized for the program. So it doesn't mean you're not eligible. But it is something that in certain cases, depending on the pool of applicants that we receive, it might be a factor in your application. Again, I don't want to discourage anyone from being dishonest on their application. And I don't want to discourage anyone, who's excited about the world and has had the opportunity to travel or to speak another language to feel like this isn't the program for them. That's not what we're trying to say. But we're being upfront that if there's a student who has not had those opportunities, and all other things remain equal, they may be prioritized for the program because this is going to be their only chance to get this language and culture experience, or their first chance to get that experience. So we want to be, again, please be honest on your applications. There are plenty of our students who speak other languages, probably the majority, or at least have studied another language in high school, right? And may have traveled a bit. Be honest, that's not going to kick you out of the running. It's one more factor when we have a very competitive pool of applications that sometimes comes into play. So.
And if I have applied previously, does that affect how the most recent application will be seen? Not necessarily. Once you apply again, we mostly just look at your most recent application, right? So we don't really dig too deep into your previous app, unless there was something that was really big that was flagged in your previous app that we'll like to take in consideration. But you shouldn't be discouraged from applying again, right? If you were not selected for the previous term or a term in the past, right? That shouldn't discourage you. Please reapply again. Just work on your application. Just try to figure out like what details that needed to be tweaked to make it more competitive, right? And just because, and this is another note, right? Just because you didn't qualify or make it into a previous year doesn't mean it would be a disadvantage for this year, right? You should apply, reapply, right?
Yeah, like Shamarka said, basically, we don't go back and read old applications. If there's a student who I don't know, something crazy happened or something, it's theoretically possible that we could go back and look at something, but it's not the default. Generally speaking, the application reviewers are looking at what's directly in front of them. And many of our screeners don't even have access to past information. And so it's just a clean slate every time. And there's certainly not a situation where anyone's saying, oh, well, this student applied 3 times, therefore we're not letting them in. Nothing like that is happening. So assume that, it should not be a disadvantage for you to apply multiple times. We understand this is a competitive program that many of you can apply for technically like up to 8 times during high school. And there's nothing wrong with that. We've even heard rumors, or we've heard of students who kind of submit an application with maybe their 9th graders is their first chance to apply, and they're not even thinking they're going to get in, but they want to try it and see what it's like. That's fine too. So don't consider it to be a disadvantage for you to apply more than once.
Yeah. And this is a good, unique question. How much physical involvement shall be expected? I saw some cooking assignment. Would students be required to travel outside of the house, etc.? It depends. It really depends on the class, right? So say for instance, I know one of our Arabic teachers does have one of those cooking sessions where they will cook like falafels, right? So we will ship you class materials with the falafel mix and everything that you need to create that. But there's not much other physical involvements that you should expect. But like I said, it really depends. Maybe Angela can speak to when the guest speakers come in, maybe they have some show and tells or dance classes or something like that, but I'm not expecting there to be much physical activity you will have to do on program, and no travel outside of the house.
Right. Yeah, like maybe there might be a video that you make if you want to film something outside of your house, but it's not an expectation. And I want to make clear in terms of accommodations, if, there's some limitation that a student has where they're not able to participate in an activity in the same way that other students can, that is absolutely fine. And we will work with that and we will make sure that it's an equitable experience for you. So, but generally speaking, this is like you're on your computer and then, some of the guest speakers are doing more of a demonstration, while others have you all simultaneously cooking something. So it really depends. But you always get information in advance. And like Shamarcus says, we send you pretty much everything. Like there's one class this time where students were asked to buy flour because we didn't want to ship you like a small amount of flour in the mail. But generally speaking, we're sending all of that straight to your house and you're not expected to do anything outside your house.
Um, do you select candidates evenly from different states? Not necessarily. It really depends on how many people apply. We really just select or evaluate all applications equitably. Though we do acknowledge the fact that we do have a lot of West Coasters, a lot of people who apply from like California, a lot of people who apply from like North Carolina, those different type of states. So just for probability sake, right, or statistics wise, there will be more maybe California students than other states, right? And I'm personally from Mississippi, so I would like to see more applicants from Mississippi, but we usually don't see that many, right? So we can't necessarily have an even distribution of candidates from all of the 50 states, as well as territory.
Yeah, we kind of aim to have as much representation from as many states as possible. But that, of course, can depend on the pool and all sorts of different factors. But if you are in a state that tends not to have a lot of applicants for programs, please apply and tell your friends. We want to see this, more people hear about our program who might not typically hear about it. And then I flagged a question, would we need a camera for the meetings so that the teacher can make sure we're there? Yes. So there are a couple of requirements for this program. And one of them is that unless you have an approved accommodation, you are expected to have your cameras on for the entirety of the call. And this isn't just to make sure you're paying attention. It's also because these are language classes where just even the way that you're forming your words, that's really important information for your teacher to be able to see is how are you pronouncing the words? And then, just being an engaged class member, because these are small classes and you are going to be, called on a lot. You're going to be, fully participating a lot. And so unless there's some kind of specific circumstance that requires a temporary turning off of your camera or something like that, which is communicated to us in advance, the program is pretty strict about cameras on. And that actually is a good segue into, what if you don't have a PC? There is some financial assistance available through this program. So if a student needs like a tablet or something because they don't have any other ability to join, because we don't allow students to join via cell phone. Like we want you like sitting and engaged. Then that can be requested. There is a form to request that. So if that's a concern of yours, no worries. Don't apply for the program, and then once you're accepted, then there is a form that you can submit to say like, hey, I'm ready to participate in this program, but I'm missing this one thing, and I need some support. And that goes for like internet sometimes as well. If a student doesn't have internet at home, there may be some assistance in terms of Wi-Fi. I don't think that's happened before, but it is possible to request. So yeah, the technical requirements like Shamarcus is showing is reliable internet, a laptop, desktop, or tablet with a webcam. And then, we're not like strongly enforcing the headset thing, but we really recommend the headset for the same reason that we want cameras on, so that your teachers can hear you and help you with your pronunciation. So if any of these are potential barriers to you participating, please go ahead and apply, and then reach out to us and we can support you.
Yeah. Another question, can feedback be provided on why a student may not have been accepted? Unfortunately, we're not able to do that. We are very short-staffed. It's really only 3 of us on the Virtual NSLI-Y team. And we will have to send out so many feedbacks on why we didn't select the student. So just in that sense, it would just be a heavy load for us to take on. Though we do recommend that you reapply, tweak your essays, right? Look at our website, review our websites. We also have like testimonials and all the other things that students share on our social media accounts, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. If you take all of those things into account and try to tailor your essays the next time around for the next cohort, that will make your application more competitive.
And to be clear, our selection team is broader than that, but yeah, administratively, it's like me and Shamarcus and like a third of another person. So we do our best.
Ooh, where can I find stories and testimonials? Great question, because I write some of those. You can find it on our NSLI-Y interactive page. So there's a link here. You can also find it on our social media accounts, our NSLI-Y page, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We also have a LinkedIn for Virtual NSLI-Y that's being created, so stay tuned on that. But the Instagram and Facebook are pretty active, and you can find a lot of testimonials that will be posted there. But also you can read a lot of great testimonials here on the NSLI-Y interactive page. You can read about overseas, for NSLI-Y overseas, there's a lot of testimonials there for them, as well as for Virtual NSLI-Y as well.
And I think that's a good segue, actually. Actually, Shamarcus, if you could scroll down to Instagram. I know we're hitting the hour here. And so I want to note, first of all, the NSLI-Y Instagram account provides updates and reminders for both the overseas and the virtual program. If you see the color purple, it is probably virtual. We try to kind of do that to make it easier to pick out our posts. So kind of blue is kind of the overseas color, and then purple-ish is the virtual NSLI-Y color. But we recommend, if you're on Instagram, start following our account. And also, as I mentioned at the top of the call, the program in general has been wading into Discord a little bit. So in addition to there being a participants only Discord for Virtual NSLI-Y, Shamarcus, could you mute, because I'm hearing like feedback.
Sure.
Sorry. In addition to that, there is also a brand new Ask NSLI-Y Discord server that is about to be announced, like I think within the next like 2 or 3 days. And the announcement and the link will be made available on NSLI-Y social media. So if you are a student with a Discord account and you have questions about applying for overseas or virtual programs, keep an eye out for that. That's just like one more way for you to ask questions. Also, feel free, if you want, you can reply to a post on Instagram and ask your question, and a staff member will get back to you. So we encourage you to email us, but social media is another opportunity for you to see what's going on, make sure you don't miss anything. And then, Shamarcus, could you go back to our website for a second?
I can find it. It's being hid by all the Zoom tools.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no,
I'm glad you're the one navigating. There we go. So yeah, on the right side there, if above Twitter, yeah, there it is. So if you put your email address in there and press submit, we often get students who put their name in like 10 times because unfortunately you don't get a confirmation page. But you can sign up for newsletters from both Overseas and Virtual NSLI-Y by putting your information into that little mini form on our website to keep you apprised and send you reminders, send you tips for the application, etc. That will come through your inbox if you subscribe to our newsletters there. And then I guess, Shamarcus, do you have any last questions you want to answer or before we wrap up?
So we answered most of them. Yeah, I'll just make one last note for questions about Overseas NSLI-Y. You can also find a lot of information about that and their application on our website. So if you just type in this, NSLI4youth.org, you'll find all the information relevant to the overseas program, right? So our website will be a very important resource for you to learn about both the overseas and the Virtual NSLI-Y program. And we've done a lot of modification to make it very easy for you to navigate and find everything. So for those who all had questions about the overseas program and its application, you can find it all here.
Yes, and we have there are going to be someone at the top of the call asked if there were going to be Q&A sessions like this for the overseas program. Yes. So those will be announced again, either or both via the newsletter that I just pointed out, as well as on social media. So if those haven't been advertised yet, they will be soon. So keep an eye out for that. And there will be opportunities to talk with our colleagues who focus more on the overseas program. And it is true that it can be a little confusing right now because both applications are open right now, but they are separate applications, the Virtual NSLI-Y and the Overseas NSLI-Y applications. And the Overseas NSLI-Y cycle is much longer. There is an interview. It's quite a lengthy process to get selected for summer or academic year programs abroad. But their application period is open now at the same time that our application for winter, January to March, is open. But we've got it all on our website, and we do have some of our newsletters mention both of our programs. And Shamarcus has made some really helpful social media posts about like what's the difference between the programs, what are the deadlines, who can apply to either one, and so again. I recommend checking out our social media for more like help kind of deciding which program or whether both programs are right for you.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Right. Well, go ahead, Marcus.
Well, since we are past time, we will close here. I want to thank you all, Angela. I would like to thank you all for attending. Thank you for asking such great questions. We look forward to reading your applications. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us at virtualnsly@americancouncils.org. We'll be happy to answer any more questions you may have. And did you want to say anything?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I was muted. I almost got through the whole call without doing that. Just a correction to the slide. The fall 24 application deadline is October 23rd. So ignore that stuff about June.
24.
Yeah. The winter 24 application deadline is October 23rd. So don't miss it. And thank you for your interest. Thank you for coming today. And we hope to see your applications in the future.
Bye, everyone.